So this is we're talking about the FCC guidelines for broadcast on WBCR-lp. We are a non-commercial station, and because of that, we have to abide by certain FCC rules in order to keep our license. Our license is up for renewal this year. It's especially important that as we're kind of launching this new station and bringing on new programmers, that we're pretty strict about letting you know what you can say and what you can't say over the air. So the FCC does do random inspections. They don't sit there. There's not like a designated representative sitting here listening to 97.7 for violations. Basically, the FCC investigates usually only if there's a consumer complaint. Meaning, like if a listener calls in to the FCC or makes a report on their website, then they'll look into it. And they generally look into every violation. However, WBCR does not self-report on violations. So if somebody calls WBCR and says, you know, I don't really like what your programmer said, or I think that borders on, I don't know, indecent, or that violates the non-commercial policy or whatever, if they call that into us, we don't have to report that to the FCC. So we are fairly safe, and we're going to self-police a little bit. We'll we'll have different members of the organization listening to your shows and kind of checking to make sure you're following the rules. The rules kind of seem simple, but like I said, there are some subtleties. Graham, is there anything else you want to say before we dive into the legal station ID?
My overall statement would be, if in doubt, don't do it. Okay? That's because, as Susie said, some of these things are, I would use the term ambiguous.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, if you find yourself in a situation, you're on air, something is happening, you're about to say something or do something, and you have doubts about whether it's crossing a line, just don't do it.
Yeah.
I know that can be looked upon as self-censorship and could be taken negatively, but on the other hand, if somebody does make a report to the FCC, it could result in a $25,000 fine. And that's the end of the station. It's gone. We're done.
Yeah, or they stall our license renewal.
Yeah. You know, so there can be consequences. It's not a matter of, you know, the station trying to tell you, like I say, it's really taking a little care, and if you're not sure, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good guideline. There's a lot at stake, and I think sometimes these rules were written intentionally as to be open to interpretation, so the FCC has a little more power, and they take each case individually and investigate each case individually. And so there are some hard and fast guidelines, but kind of not really. Anyway, all right. So does anybody have any questions about that aspect before we move on? Ashira.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Are you gonna do anything like have a review of what these rules are, like what indecent means?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And also I'm going to send a document reviewing all of this, and there'll be a Google Doc quiz that you'll have to take and submit sometime later this weekend. It'll be open book. It's all open book. But just we're going to send you a quiz just so we know that you have an understanding of the rules. But we'll go over everything. And there are some sort of main categories. So the first one would be the legal station ID. We are required to give a legal station ID at the top of every hour, even if that hour falls in the middle of your show, even if it's awkward. You have to give a legal station ID. Our legal station ID is WBCR-lp Great Barrington. That's it.
And it should be given within, there's a little leeway, within 3 minutes of the top of the hour. So it can be 3 minutes before to 3 minutes past, but it needs to be done in that time. And that is the legal station ID.
Right.
Now, any other time during your show, you can expand on that. You know, you could say that you're listening to my show on WBCR-lp from Main Street, Great Barrington. You know, anything like that. But the legal ID at the top of the hour within 3 minutes, that has to be done.
WBCR-lp Great Barrington. That's
I'm assuming, and there will be a log where you'll have to report that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you know, if the FCC comes in and they want to look, they can look at that and say, oh yeah, you did your legal station ID. And thank you, it's done. Yeah. Payola?
Yep.
Payola?
Yeah, payola and plugola. That's
Payola and plugola. Now, I don't know, I mean, looking around here, there's a number of you that are old enough to remember Clive Davis and CBS Records, right? Here are you, Mike Ken. You know, this big, powerful guy, head of CBS Records in, I don't know what year, 70s probably. So that's just a big example. We're not in that realm. But the idea is we cannot give the impression that anyone affiliated with the station, including the programmer, is receiving any kind of financial or personal benefit from the broadcast. So it's not, so you just cannot, all right? And if it comes out that that's happening, it's a violation. Even the appearance of it can be investigated. So we have to be really careful around that. And so you can't take gifts in exchange for playing something, any kind of financial payment or a gift of some kind. We shouldn't take those things. And plugola would talk about any mention of on-air activities that can result in a benefit to an individual or entity associated with the station. Now, this could be a business that you own, a business that a friend has, or somewhere where there again is the appearance that you are going to benefit somehow. We cannot do it. We can't even have it appear that we're doing that. The other thing I've mentioned with this is if you have a show where you feel where it might be necessary, where you're expressing an opinion or promoting something or other, do a disclaimer, please. And the disclaimer can just say, you've heard them all the time on various shows on TV and radio, that the opinions are those of the host, not necessarily those of WBCR or anybody associated with the organization, and offer a chance for rebuttal, particularly if it's an opinion show. Offer that opportunity. So if somebody wants to do a rebuttal, they can do that. And that is good policy. Anyway.
Right. And so the payola plugola thing is particularly important, especially in this lovely, close, small community that we live in. So we have to be really careful about mentioning stores and how we talk about shows and that kind of thing. We all know each other. We all benefit from our relationships. But over the air, we have to be really careful that we're not giving the appearance that we're promoting something or other.
Well, is this the time then also then, Susie, to talk about superlatives? Would that be appropriate now, or do you want to do that later?
Yeah, no, we could talk about that
qualifications. Let's say qualifications.
Yeah.
For instance, you might say again, expressing the personal opinion, you might say, so-and-so is the best restaurant in town. You may feel that. It may be your favorite place to go, but it's not, again, it's promoting a business, and it's not something that we would like you to say on air. Because again, it appears as if you're promoting that business above others. So qualitative statements of that kind are really not allowed as part of our license.
Also price information.
Yeah.
You can't tell people how much tickets are to a concert, even if it's free. You can't say that.
Is that the case?
That's what I read on a couple of.
See, this is one of the things where I think there's an ambiguity. Like, say the bandstand in the summer, right? You might announce, okay, probably, assuming we have the airwaves, obviously the kind of thing would announce there's Friday night concerts at the bandstand, and this Friday night so-and-so is appearing. There are no tickets. I don't know. I mean, it's a question to me if you're allowed to say it's a free concert.
The difference is if you're stating the cost of something that is being presented by a nonprofit, I believe. It's about commercialism.
Yeah, so if you say it's a free concert at the bandstand. I mean, and then again, if you're in doubt, don't do it, okay?
Yeah.
So just say it's a concert at the bandstand. But we're not allowed to mention prices of any kind.
Prices of any kind. Yeah.
You can tell people how to find information about the prices, but that'll come to probably in the call to action section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calls to
Call
action.
to action.
Okay. So one of the major differences between a non-commercial station like WBCR and commercial stations that we're prohibited by the FCC from issuing calls to action. A call to action is when a programmer asks, urges, or suggests that the listener should perform some task that could result in a for-profit business making money. So a call to action could be the programmer urging a listener to buy a record, being like, I don't know, I can't think of anybody.
Oh, come on, you can.
Yeah. So Mumford & Sons has a new album, and it's really amazing, and you should go get it. Totally prohibited. Yes. Programmer urging the listener to go to a concert or performance. We cannot tell people that they should go to a concert or performance. We can mention that it exists, and we can in circumspect language tell them how to find information about it. The programmer can't mention the price of a record or a concert ticket. The host can't urge a listener to go to a certain store or a venue. We definitely can't urge listeners to boycott a company or event or not go to something. And we also cannot urge our listeners on the air to take a specific political action that's super important coming up, especially because this election season is going to be very complicated and very fraught and very heated. And so WBCR has to be very cautious about how we present political content.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that you can inform people.
Yeah.
You can tell them that something is happening, tell them how to get the information.
Right.
So, you could say, Guy Davis is playing at the barn.
Yeah.
On such and such a day. For more information, go to this phone number or this website.
Right.
You can say that. You can't say Guy Davis is playing at the barn such and such a date. Guy Davis is great. I love Guy Davis. You can say that actually, but you can't say Guy Davis is the best blues player on the planet. And tickets are $20 and go to this concert. Right. That's extreme, but so you find ways around informing people how they can.
Right. So for example, I have this nice document here. Okay, so this is something you could say legally. Just say that was the Yvette Brothers. Their new album comes out next Tuesday. That's legal. You're providing information. But just say you say, that was the Yvette Brothers. Their new album comes out next Tuesday. You should go buy it at School Kids Records. That's illegal on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
But you can say that was the Yvette Brothers. I saw them last week at the barn and they were awesome. You can say that. But you can't say, you know, that was the Yvette Brothers. They'll be performing next Tuesday at a fundraiser and you should go and support the cause. You can't say that. So hopefully that is, that's clear. And again, I'll send out a document that kind of fleshes this out a little further. But the bottom line is you really can't give the impression that anybody's getting any financial benefit. I remember I had a friend of mine on the air at the beginning of this whole thing, and I gave her the whole rundown in the FCC, and still she said something about, you know, J.C. Penney makes the best pajama pants or something crazy like that. You can't, and she said everybody should go get them or something like that. You can't say something like that. Just basically informational statements. The next thing would be slander and defamation. Just don't do it. Don't speak poorly of other people. Don't speak poorly of organizations. Don't speak poorly, you know, of bands or events or anyone local. Just don't do it. If there's any question, just don't do it. And if you do have a question about something, definitely connect with management first. We could, you know, we could be sued, obviously, if something is construed as slander. And the next thing that segs us right into election broadcasting. We can't endorse, unfortunately, we can't endorse or oppose any candidate on air. The programmer can't. We can certainly air opinions, but we have to give space, if requested, to the opposing opinion. So if we were airing something by a particular candidate, we would have to give equal space, if requested, to the opposing candidate. And so what we'll probably do is prepare kind of a special election guideline for the upcoming election season, just so everybody is clear about what they can say and what they can't say. Although I don't know how many political programs we have. That's very important. There's a station in Connecticut, WTIC. They're major, they're huge. They're supported by millions of insurance dollars. They have the best lawyers. Their license was on hold for 2 or 3 years because of one program that gave the impression that they were supporting a particular candidate. And so if WTIC can be felled by the FCC about something like that, so can WBCR. And we don't have the defenses that they do.
I had a question that reminded
Sure.
me. I have a question about the opposing views and giving them time. You
Sure.
mean like on your own show, or just like, hey, you can come and you can have a show and say what you want?
Well, if just say you air something about, you know, potential Mayor Jones, the opposing party on the ticket has the opportunity to request equal time, and then you have to put them on the air. You don't have to go out looking for it.
No, but does it have to be on your show?
Does it have to be in your show?
I would say that would be good policy.
So profanity, indecency, and obscenity. According to the FCC, there are 3 types of prohibited language on public airwaves. It is a violation of federal law to air obscene programming at any time. Although I have looked this up, I've looked into it, the FCC has never made a ruling that anything that's been broadcast so far has been obscene, meaning that's a pretty high bar. So they've never nailed anybody for obscene content, the FCC. But they don't want it. Obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment and cannot be broadcast anytime. There's a 3-pronged test from the Supreme Court that's used to determine whether material is obscene. A, the average person applying contemporary community standards. That means national community standards, not local. So the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest, whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law, and whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. That's obscene. And like I said, very high bar. The next thing would be indecent or profane material. Indecent or profane language or programming can be aired, but only during certain hours, called safe harbor. Safe harbor is between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. A programmer themselves can never utter indecent or profane language or describe indecent or profane situations, but we can air songs that contain that language. So indecent material depicts or describes acts or organs that are sexual or excretory in nature that the national contemporary community standards find to be patently offensive. So you see how this is a little bit gray. You can get fined for just for puerile, lewd comments or jokes that go too far. Then profanity is a different category from indecent, apparently. Profanity is offensive language that amounts to a nuisance. There is no complete list of profane words from the FCC, but the following are definitely profane. And so this, Graham, if you want to take this away, or maybe Judy, we shouldn't say these, I don't know, but this is basically the George Carlin list.
There are 7 words that are
I was kidding, it's all right.
defined, okay? And George Carlin did his whole routine. So, do never, ever say shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, or tits. Never, ever. And amplifying a little bit what Susie just said, you may play a song, say Steve Earle, fuck the FCC, okay? You can play it.
Between 10 and 6.
Between 10 and 6. You can never announce the title. You can't do that, because then you have said the word. Steve Earle can say it, but you can't.
That's right.
So, you know, we have to, and we just have to follow these guidelines.
So what we're going to do next is look at a PowerPoint, which was put together by a law firm, and it's an indecency quiz basically. And so we're going to look at that and go through. Okay. So if you all can see this, this is a good and thought-provoking test for indecent, profane, and obscene language and situations. And as you will see as we go through this, again, it's a little bit vague. All right, so here we go. For every wrong answer, you could be heavily fined. The maximum fine for a single violation is $325K, or up to a maximum of $3 million for continuing violations. So all of these questions are very important. Okay, some words are profane regardless of context. That would be true. The FCC maintains that some language is presumptively profane. It always skips question 2. Poop, penis, ass, kiss my ass, bastard, bitch, dick, pissed off, and booty are not indecent.
True.
That's true. You can say dickhead on air, but you can't say cocksucker. So long as the reference is
Thank
fleeting.
goodness.
So you can't really double down on any of these words, but they're really not on the indecent list. Okay. Stations that air the same programs at the same time will be treated in the same way. So how you want to look at this question is, all right, just say WSBS down the road airs an indecent program at the same time that WBCR airs an indecent program. WSBS is commercial, we're non-commercial. Will they be treated the same way? Okay, that's false. Not because of the commercial versus non-commercial aspect of it, but because it depends on who reports them. That's it. As a general rule, the FCC finds only stations against whom a complaint is made, and then only if the program was broadcast outside the safe harbor period, which is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we need to keep that in mind. Words that cannot be understood by the average listener may nonetheless be indecent. Believe it or not, that is true. For example, somebody who works with BCR has a friend who has a noise project, and so he takes kind of profane words and stretches them out over long minutes, and that would still be considered indecent. Or if you're talking about indecency in another language or something like that, the law is not limited to obscene, profane, or indecent material broadcast in English. So really anything, regardless of the language or the delivery, can be considered obscene, profane, or indecent. Okay. Indecency counts, even if it's broadcast by mistake. Totally true. The accidental nature of a broadcast may affect the amount of a fine, but not the fact that indecent material is broadcast. So if somebody reports us, the FCC will contact us and investigate. And so we'll have an opportunity to defend ourselves. And there's certainly a lot of different factors that go into the final decision. Profanity is just another word for indecency. According to the FCC, it is not. They are different. Although there's an overlap between the two concepts, the FCC insists that they are distinct and the material that is not indecent may nonetheless be profane. So like I said, we'll send out a detailed document after the fact that describes clearly what the differences are between indecent, profane, and obscene material. A program may be indecent even if no one's listening. It's true. The broadcast of indecent matter is prohibited between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. regardless of the actual audience. It takes at least one complainant to raise the issue, but the commission has not required complainants to prove that they listened. So there's a little twist. Local community values determine whether a broadcast is indecent.
Yes.
The answer to that, even though you might think that that's true, the answer is no, because we're not looking at local community values. We have very specific local community values here in the Berkshires, Southern Berkshires, Great Barrington, you know, our little worlds, but we're talking about national community values, which is great. The standard applied is national standards intended to reflect the values of an average broadcast viewer or listener, not the sensibilities of any individual listener or community, which I think is a wonderful rule. Song titles are exempt from indecency prosecution. We went over that. Yeah, they're not. No exception for song titles. There's a limited exception for classic songs and great literary works. While we think that that should be true, the answer is no. According to the FCC, indecent is indecent. Artistic merit is considered as a factor, but not as an absolute defense to an indecency complaint. So we could certainly make an argument that we were airing something that had some deep value, but won't always fly. The FCC exempts bona fide news, events, and documentaries from its indecency policy. You might think yes, but the answer is no. Indecency law recognizes the importance of context, but grants no absolute exemptions for news or newsworthy material, meaning they could interpret what we broadcast in any number of ways. So if there's any doubt, just don't do it. Find another way around it. The FCC distinguishes between commercial and non-commercial stations, just as listeners do. This one, I mean, in some ways. It applies the same standard to all stations, although it may exercise discretion and impose a lesser fine on a non-commercial station. The FCC distinguishes between the broadcast of live and recorded material. This is particularly important and or interesting right now because we are now mostly pre-recording at home and we'll be back in the studio eventually, but I imagine our new normal is going to be a little bit of both. So the FCC distinguishes between the broadcast of live and recorded material. The answer is false. The distinction between live and recorded material became virtually meaningless when the FCC decided to make even fleeting or isolated usages indecent. I'm a little bit unclear about that explanation, and I think there's a little bit of a different rule as far as podcasts are concerned. But as it stands now, anything over WBCR-lp 97.7 FM, all of it needs to be clean. Vile racial epithets and blasphemous religious slurs are profane.
Yes.
Oh, false. Okay, wait. What does this mean? Huh. I think that falls under hate speech, though. I mean, never, ever, ever, ever say anything like that on WBCR, not ever. Whether it's okay or not with the FCC, it's not okay with us. Under the Communications Act, air talent cannot be personally fined for indecent speech. This is interesting because we're talking about the radio station as an organization versus a single programmer. You know, I would think that WBCR, the organization as a whole, the license holder, they would be primarily solely responsible for any content, but the Communications Act permits personal liability for a violation of the indecency law after the individual has received prior notice. There is proposed legislation that would remove the requirement of a warning, but as it stands now, if you are a DJ, a programmer that continually violates specific rules, yes, you can be sued yourself. Does somebody have something to say? I thought, okay, never mind. All right. If a listener is upset about an off-color joke in the air, the station must report the complaint to the FCC. The answer is no, we don't have to self-report, which is great. So that adds another layer of protection, but we absolutely will be listening and monitoring content, and we'll contact individual programmers if we see things going off the rails. Great. A station won't be fined if it bleeps or pixelates indecent material. This one is super tricky. The answer is false. Even an edited program may be found indecent if a sexual meaning can be inferred. So if there's a big erotic story and you're just bleeping out kind of the tricky words that are on the 7 deadly words list, no, you can still be fined or you can still be gone after by the FCC. The issue may devolve into a question of proof if the station cannot provide satisfactory evidence of the broadcast edited versions of music. The FCC could find that unedited indecent material is broadcast, meaning if you are live in the studio and you're playing a song peppered with indecent words and you're bleeping them out off the soundboard, the FCC could say that you were playing unedited indecent material. So there's a fine line right there. So in the case of like a radio edit of something, if you can prove to the FCC that you played the clean radio edit, then we'd be safe. But if you were just bleeping off the board, it would be a little bit of an edge case. But again, this is a case-by-case thing. The FCC will not allow indecency complaints to be used as a form of harassment. We would love that to be true, but it's not. So if somebody in town has something against WBCR and calls the FCC constantly about violations, the FCC is going to investigate everyone. They're not going to focus on that person as a problem. They're going to say there's a problem with the station instead. The origin of a complaint and the motive of the complainant are irrelevant. The FCC will excuse exclamation uttered by winners on a live call-in contest line such as, "Holy shit, I won." The answer is false. This is why we don't do live call-ins currently at WBCR out of the studio, pre-recording, totally different story. But we don't do live call-ins, first of all, because we don't have a delay and because we really can't control what people are going to say over the air. The FCC has urged broadcasters to tape delay all live broadcasts. The fact that a broadcast is live may, in appropriate circumstances, affect the amount of the fine. So there are all kinds of factors. Some of the infamous 7 dirty words are now so commonplace that they are no longer considered indecent. No, indecency is always indecent. But they have removed pissed off from the indecent list, but you can't say pissed, but you can say pissed off. So there's a little something. If one program contains 6 different indecent utterances, the FCC will consider fining the station for 6 violations, not just 1. That is true. The FCC reserves the discretion to fine a station not just for the broadcast of a program containing indecent matter, but for each indecent utterance within a program. So it really depends. They are reserving the right for their own discretion. So all of this is case by case. So don't be a knob on the air. Even FCC commissioners have a sense of humor. That is not true. They don't. In the commission's own words, it is well settled that comedy formats do not insulate otherwise indecent material. So even if it might be funny or topical or cute or clever, the FCC is not gonna excuse that.